Well, it's Happy Labor Day. So that means that some of the people that are listening are at work like I am. Some of the people are not at work. Maybe they're out at the lake. Maybe they're at a park. Maybe they're just out having fun. That's what would be nice, be out having fun. But somebody's got to stay behind and make sure everything keeps rolling along. Of course, Labor Day is a day for people that work, you know, to honor the people that are working, which is the backbone of this country. If we didn't have people working in this country, we wouldn't have a country for very long. And unfortunately, we're getting closer and closer to that all the time. With more and more people going on welfare, and a lot of those people don't need to be on welfare. They just are. With more and more people being out of work, and what few jobs are coming along are being given to illegal immigrants by the government, pretty soon we're going to be able to fit all the people celebrating Labor Day in one room. You know, when you start thinking about the way things have been going here in this country, it reminded me of something that I heard years ago. Hopefully, most people listening remember Paul Harvey, and that's the rest of the story. I always loved, as a young person, listening to Paul Harvey. He had some of the most interesting little stories that always had a surprise ending. A lot of the younger people nowadays, they remember, or they know Paul Harvey from a Super Bowl ad that was out several years ago. It was called "And God Made a Farmer." Well, Paul Harvey had another story that I hate to call it a story, another comment that he made that's very apropos more today than when he said this back in the 60s. And that's astounding to think that he said this back in the 1960s. I'm going to read it here verbatim. "If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I'd seized the ripest apple on the tree, you. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, 'Do as you please.' To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old, I would teach to pray after me, 'Our Father which art in Washington.' And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whomever I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families that war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbols of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what do you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism and moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be, and thus I could undress you in public and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing now. This is Paul Harvey. Good day. Holy moly. I mean, you know, it's so funny. It's so hard to read that and not make comments at every single point he's making, because every single point he's making has a real life example today, right now. Also, back in the 1960s, a former FBI agent, Cleon Skosen, wrote a book about the communist plan to destroy America from within. And some of his points were: infiltrate and take control of one or both parties in the U.S., use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights, you know, like maybe marriage. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making positions. Discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Eliminate laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free press and free speech. Break down standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, and radio and TV. Eliminate prayer and any form of religious expression in schools on the grounds that it violates separation of church and state. Discredit the U.S. Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, and out of date with modern needs. Discredit America's founding fathers by presenting them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. Infiltrate and gain control of labor unions and big business. You know, and a lot of what this FBI agent said back in the 1960s dovetails exactly with what Paul Harvey just said. And it's astounding to think how these two men, one who made his living in radio and one who made his living as an FBI agent, were both able to so clearly see what would be happening to the United States. I don't think either one of them would be surprised if they were alive today. I'm assuming, I know Paul Harvey has died. I don't know about the other gentleman, but it's just, it's astounding how far America has fallen. A number of times it's been said that America would never be defeated from outside. It would be defeated from the inside. And we see that more and more with this president. Of course, that's been his whole objective this whole time. You know, oh, he's going to fundamentally change America. Yeah, he's changing it into something that's not America, not the land of the free. And one of the first things that they've got to do to really make this happen, to be able to overwhelm the entire population, is the Second Amendment. They have to put down the Second Amendment. They have to take guns away from the citizenry at large. Like they say, a man with a gun is a citizen. A man without a gun is a slave. And they know this. You know, we've had several people come into the city here the last few weeks running for president. We had Ted Cruz. We had Marco Rubio. Well, one coming up is Ben Carson. He's going to be here next month. And overall, I've kind of liked Ben Carson. I don't think he has enough fire in his belly. I'd love to be able to see him get upset, see him get mad at somebody. You know, we need somebody that's going to pound the table a little bit. But I came across something that was the first time I've really come across something that Ben Carson said that really made me go, whoa, wait a minute, really? Ben Carson said that he does not stand with the Constitution on one of the most basic duties of man, and that is to be able to defend one's self, family, and community from attackers and tyrannical government. He said, there's a reason for the Second Amendment. People do have the right to have weapons. However, it depends on where you live. So wait a minute. Our rights depend on where we live? He went on. He said, I think if you live in the midst of a lot of people, I'm afraid that semi-automatic weapon is going to fall into the hands of a crazy person. I would rather you not have it. However, if you live out in the country somewhere by yourself and want to own a semi-automatic weapon, I've got no problem with that. Really? So if you live in town where you're more likely to be attacked, where you're more likely to need self-protection, you shouldn't have a gun. But if you live way out in the middle of the boonies where you're never going to be around anybody, where your life will hopefully never be in danger, well, then we'll let you have a gun. That actually kind of shocked me. You know, when you look at statistics, the United States is third in murders throughout the world. That includes some pretty vicious places out there that are literally at war right now. And we came in third. However, here's one thing that the liberals don't want you to know or to think about. If you take Chicago, Detroit, Washington, D.C., where our politicians are, and New Orleans out of the mix, the United States is fourth from the bottom for murders. So the United States goes from being fourth from the bottom to third from the top because of Chicago, which just set a new record on deaths, Detroit, Washington, D.C., and New Orleans. And the funny thing about these four cities is this. Number one, they're all long-term democratically run cities. And number two, they have some of the toughest gun control laws in the United States, because when the bad guys are the only ones that have guns, it's the good people who die. You know, they're in Chicago. The Chicago Tribune was interviewing their crime lab co-director, Harold Pollack, and he said that a study shows that very few inmates indicated using gun shows or the internet to get their guns. Rather, they get guns in the most undetectable ways on the street. He said the inmates knew that they would run the risk of being caught by police, but were less concerned about getting caught by the cops than being put in the position of not having a gun to defend themselves. Even crooks realize that if you have a gun, you can defend yourself. Which also, you know, the other side of that coin is that if you don't have a gun, you can't defend yourself. The vast majority of the inmates interviewed use handguns to commit their crimes or to protect themselves. Very few cited using military-style assault weapons or rifles. As far as specifics regarding their sources for purchasing guns, some of the inmates indicated that gangs, which run really rampant in Chicago, of course, Chicago's been known as a gang town since, you know, back in the 1920s, but gangs have individuals with a firearm owner's identification card who can buy guns and then sell them to gang members. Others indicated that they used corrupt cops who seize guns and then put them back on the street. This is why more and more police departments are wanting to melt the guns down, because it keeps their corrupt cops from giving them back out to the crooks. That's kind of a sad statement. The inmates made clear they do not walk into gun stores to buy guns. They don't go to gun shows to buy guns, which proves a point. Background checks place a burden on law-abiding citizens, which criminals avoid. Wait. So you mean criminals looking for weapons don't bother going through background checks and getting put in a government database of gun owners? Why? How can they do that? Well, it's called being a criminal. But the facts bear out, like everybody would think, like common sense would tell you, not that liberals have any common sense. The more gun laws are passed, the more creative criminals will become to get around them. And people who follow the law-abiding citizens, are the ones that get punished for it. You know, we had a gun show here in Chattanooga over at Camp Jordan this past weekend, yesterday and Saturday, and it was pretty interesting. You know, I went over there, and, you know, I saw there, I bet there was probably well over 1,000 guns and rifles in there. And, you know, not a single one of those guns or rifles or pistols, none of those weapons that were in there, not a single one jumped up and shot anybody. They stayed right in their little cases and behaved themselves. You know, if I had a nickel for every time I've been called paranoid for carrying a gun or for defending the Second Amendment, I most certainly wouldn't be driving around my old Ford pickup truck out here. That seems to be the fallback for the anti-gun zealots, an accusation they feel is so self-evident that they don't feel the need to back it up with evidence, which is, you know, kind of good, because what evidence do they really have? You know, like I said, you know, the guns aren't jumping up and, you know, shooting themselves at people. But just to be sure, we decided to run some numbers. What are the odds that in their worst fear, a law-abiding gun owner like myself was to snap and decide to start shooting people, start murdering people? How do those odds stack up against the odds that a situation like that will happen when somebody has a concealed carry permit or a carry permit, a regular carry permit? Well, they don't have a national gun registry, but the state of Texas does keep track of the crime rates for concealed carriers. And we know that these individuals had to pass a background check and keep a clean record. So, you know, that's a good benchmark to start with. And that's roughly a rate of 0.565 per 100,000 individuals. But here's the thing. That's the ratio of CHL holders who have committed a murder. That's not the murder rate of Texas's combined by CHL holders. 0.565. In 2013, Texas had 26.5 million citizens. 4 people were murdered by a CHL holder. That's a rate of 0.0151 per 100,000. What's the national homicide rate? 4.3. That's a 28,000% difference. And we're the ones you're worried about? The people that have done everything legally that you want to disarm? I mean, let's look at something. The odds of being murdered by a CHL holder in Texas means that the average person today has about a 1 in 12,000 chance of getting struck by lightning. Yet you're 7 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to get murdered by a CHL holder while living in Texas. What if you played the Powerball every single week of your entire life? The odds of winning on one ticket is 1 in 175 million. If you played that every week, you'd buy 4,000 some odd tickets. Your odds of winning once, 1 in 42,000. Twice as likely as getting murdered by a CHL holder in Texas. And they worry about us. We'll be back with more following these commercial words.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Join me for a delicious barbecue dinner that's a fundraiser for Union Gospel Mission. We're serving up barbecue, either pork or chicken, slaw, baked beans, and dessert, all on Labor Day to support our ministry to homeless guys. We'll be at table on Monday, Labor Day, at New Haven Baptist Church at 1058 Graysville Road, right at the intersection of East Brainerd Road. We'll serve from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. or until the barbecue runs out. This is John Rector, and the meal is free, but with joyous hearts, we will accept donations. All proceeds go straight to Union Gospel Mission to support our Christian programs for men who commit to stay and study with us. For more information, give me a call at 752-4998. The name is John, and we're looking forward to seeing you.
If you have the DTs, the shakes, because your phone is on the fritz, you have nomophobia. You need help. Your telecom doctor is in. Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall. Cell Surgeon yanks open the ribcage of your phone, pries out the dead heart, and puts in the beating life that you lead on your cell phone. Broken screen, phone not charging, water damage, battery given out? Cell Surgeon at Northgate Mall next Old Chicago Pizza. Check us out on Facebook. Open Sunday. Cell Surgeon. We bring your phone back to life. Mention Hot News Talk Radio and get 10% off. We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
When my brother and I opened our first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
Compass Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
And we're back. 12:40 a.m. Hot News Talk Radio. You're listening to Cowboy Up with Tex. And of course, normally you can catch David Tulis with Nooganomics, Eric Judd with Nooga Strong. And of course, our very own Russell, who has both Digital Drive and Hot News Now. Of course, you can always catch Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Megan McCain, and a lot of others. All you got to do is tune it in to 12:40 a.m., or you can go to hotnewstalkradio.com. You can go to YouTube and get us on YouTube. You can get us on Twitter. So if you can't listen to us right now, if you're out at the lake right now, this being Labor Day, if you're out at the lake right now, you can go home. You can catch us on YouTube and watch this entire show. If anybody wants to join in, our station telephone number is area code 423-800-8949. If you've got any questions, comments, statements, you want to talk about guns, pro or con, just give us a call, 800-8949. So what are the odds of being a victim of violent crime? Back in 1987, a few years ago, the New York Times read a headline entitled, 83% to be victims of crime violence. Well, here in America, males have an 18.4% chance to be a victim of violence. White people have a 15.8% chance, or roughly 1 in 6. Now, those numbers do seem to be fairly conservative, but let's just, take it from there. Now, I do have a carry permit myself, and a lot of the time I do carry. Not all the time, but, at the same time, you got to keep people guessing, But why do I arm myself? I arm myself so that I can potentially protect myself, my loved ones, friends, family, even innocent bystanders I may not even know from violent people. The odds are that I myself may at one point be a victim of violence, but once you start factoring in the other people that those go up. It cracks me up that I have literally heard somebody say, well, if you're carrying a gun, you're just inciting violence. Well, no, that's like saying if I'm carrying a fire extinguisher around, I'm anticipating a fire. No, I don't want there to be a fire. But if a fire happens, I want to be ready for one. Now, I've got a work pickup truck, and I do carry a small fire extinguisher in the truck. And I have actually had to use that fire extinguisher once. It wasn't on my car, but I was driving down the road, and a guy was having an engine problem, and his engine had caught on fire, and I was able to save his car by using my little fire extinguisher. And he was very happy I had it. Now, do you think if one of these liberals was getting robbed and attacked, and I showed up with my gun and managed to run the crook off, do you think they'd turn around and start berating me for having the gun? Or do you think maybe, just maybe, they'd be happy that I was there to help protect them? Because I got there before a cop could. In fact, at that point, the cop probably wouldn't even know they were needed, because if you're in the middle of getting robbed, how do you call for police? Not to mention response time. But they keep passing laws, more and more laws against guns. Every time you turn around, we got to pass another law. We got to pass another law. Did you ever maybe think perhaps to really enforce the ones we've got before you add another one? They've got this show on TV called American Ninja Warrior. And you have these athletes that go through a whole series of athletic events, seeing him jump the furthest, jump the highest, be able to go across bars. I mean, it's like a super, super ambitious playground. Well, they've had this show for a number of years, and it always cracks me up when they have all these different obstacles that these people have to go through, and nobody ever wins all the way. At some point, they always get knocked out. Well, then what do they do the next year? They make them even harder. Wait a minute. Nobody was able to get through the last group, and you're making it harder? Why don't you let somebody win once in a while? Then you can make it harder. Well, it's kind of like all the things that we have to do as gun owners. Every time you turn around, they're making it more and more difficult to be able to own a gun, to be able to buy ammunition. You almost cannot find 22 ammo anywhere in this country. And if you can, the cost is way up from what it was just a few years. Well, it's up a whole lot from what you would pay before Obama became president. Coincidence? I think not. Why don't you try enforcing the laws on the books before you start making new laws? Guns tend to be regulated as if they were obviously inherently dangerous and must be carefully controlled. Like I said, those guns that were at the gun show, I didn't see a single one of them acting up. I didn't see a single one of them jumping up out of their display case and start shooting people. But they must be carefully controlled. But let's look at something that's that's technically worse than guns on how many people are killed with them every year. And that's called a car. See, cars aren't presumed to be inherently dangerous because everybody's got a car and everybody uses cars. But yet, the thing about cars is anybody can own one. It doesn't matter if you're mentally ill, whether you're a past criminal, whether you're an illegal alien, anybody and everybody can own a car. And they can do whatever they want with it on private property. You don't even need a driver's license or license plate if you're driving it on private property. I remember my granddad, he had an old pickup truck that he could drive around his farm. He never took it anywhere. That was his farm truck. He used it for, carrying hay and stuff like that. And he didn't have to have it licensed. We could drive it if we wanted to as, young teens because we weren't out on a public street. That old truck was a lot of fun. So let's look at a few of the things about guns versus cars. In 2009, there were 310 million guns in the United States, and they say that it's probably 350 million in 2013. So that was a growth of 40 million guns in 5 years. 4 or 5 years, something like that. Anyway, these guns resulted in more or less 33,000 deaths in 2013, of which 64% of the guns were suicides. And let's be blunt. If somebody can't kill themselves with a gun doing a suicide, they'll figure out some other way of doing it. If they're really intent on killing themselves, they will find a way to do it. Jumping off a building, stepping out in front of a car, going all postal in front of a police officer and making the police officer shoot you. Using a car, driving into a bridge, things like that. Well, that left more or less 500 accidental deaths and 11,200 due to homicides. And these are official Center for Disease Control figures. Well, in that same year, 2013, there was 269 million registered vehicles, of which there were roughly 33,000 deaths. Roughly half of which were the drivers. So, about the same number of deaths for about the same number of cars. So, why is gun ownership so vilified and nothing is ever said about cars? You barely hear them saying anything about drunk drivers. Oh, well, the drunk driver, he ought to maybe go to jail for a few days or maybe a week or so, maybe get his license revoked. But, the fact that drunk driver killed a family of 4, well, he doesn't, he's just a good old boy. He didn't mean to do it. Well, okay, maybe so. But at the same time, people are dying because of drunk drivers. You've got people that drive recklessly and kill people. There are people that kill people running from cops. There's like one person a day minimum here in the United States that gets killed as a result of a police chase. That's not the chasee or the chaser. One additional person, one totally innocent person a day gets killed in a car. And if they were to start restricting car sales and car usage the way that they want to do it with gun ownership, they could literally save 25 times as many lives by convincing a single typical car owner to drive more responsibly. Instead of sneering at those who cling to guns out of bitterness, perhaps they ought to ask themselves why guns rather than cars invite their scorn. Of course, none of that matters to the anti-gun Democrats, as they don't care about facts or logic or lives for that matter. I mean, I remember back in the 70s when we were having the first of our gas crises. Oh, the price of gasoline went all the way up to 80 cents a gallon. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? The country's going to fall apart. And people were making the suggestion that, well, maybe what we needed to do was to limit the top speed of cars anywhere in the country to like 40 miles an hour, because it would conserve gasoline. It would also make the number of deaths go down, because two cars hitting at 40 miles an hour are going to be substantially different than two cars hitting at 60 or 70 miles an hour. Let's take that one step further. What if we were to make cars only able to go 20 miles an hour? That's still a lot faster than walking. Now, yes, it would take a long time to get to Atlanta, but we would all be so safe. Why? The cars wouldn't be killing anybody. And if you ever did anything like get a speeding ticket, or if you got a DUI, lose your right to have a driver's license forever. Why? Well, that would save a whole lot of lives right there. You know, in a lot of the nations in Europe, if you get caught for one DUI, not even killing anybody, just getting a simple DUI, you can lose your license for years, if not for forever. You don't see a whole lot of DUIs in Europe because people know, don't drink and drive. Out here, we have, big ads on TV. Don't drink and drive. We will catch you. We see those ads every single day. And people do it anyway because they know they're not going to get in that much trouble. Oh, it's going to cost you $10,000. Well, not if it's your first time, and maybe not if it's your third or fourth time. And even if you kill somebody in a car wreck because of what you did, you may get jail time. You may not. But we've got to cut down on people, good, law-abiding, honest citizens. We can't let them carry guns because somebody might get hurt, even though all statistics prove that it's not the law-abiding people you got to worry about. It's the crooks that get away with what they're doing because the laws are not enforced. What we need to be worried about is not law-abiding citizens. We need to be worried about what could easily be called goon violence. We have to make a distinction between criminals and regular citizens. Of course, it would help a whole lot if stupid liberals quit their litany of lies. Guns are not the root cause of man's evil actions. Neither are the multiplying categories of the Psychiatric Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Evil is a part of the human condition, always has been and always will be. Evil cannot be wished away, treated away, medicated away, or legislated away. Evil will always be here because bad people do bad things. It's that simple. And good people need to be able to protect themselves from bad people. You just can't go figure how some people's minds work. You go out to California and the people out there, they literally will not listen to anything you say because their minds are just totally closed. It doesn't matter how many statistics, how many facts you have, their mind is made up. That's just all there is to it. It always cracks me up about liberals. You have liberals are always pointing to Europe as an example of what we should be doing. Oh, we need to be more like Europe in this way. Oh, we need to be more like Europe in that way. I've got kind of cracked up a little bit over some of the stuff going on in Europe this week. First off, all in the news is about all of the Muslim refugees fleeing primarily Syria, but the Middle East. The Muslims are running from the militant Muslims. But the Muslim religion is all about peace. Well, then why are so many people running from the peaceful Muslims that are also Muslim? You think maybe they know something we don't? But the thing of it is these people are crossing borders illegally. And a lot of them have said that their prime place to try to get to is Germany, because they know that Germany will help them out. Germany will give them all sorts of stuff, you know, kind of like people running from Central America, going through Mexico to get to the United States, because they know that the United States will give them stuff. And the countries in the middle are not real happy with it. And they're trying to stop them. They've been trying to close their borders, which is made difficult because they're all members of what's called the European Union, which declares that from one nation to another nation, the borders are, for the most part, open borders, going from like France to Germany, or from France to Italy, or, you know, various other European nations. You know, yeah, you have to have your card and you got to show it, but there's nothing to stop you from going from one country to another country. In fact, this is so bad that England is talking about withdrawing from the European Union, not because of problems with the euro, but because of they don't want any more Muslims in their country. You know, the Muslims have gotten to be such a problem in France that France has passed new laws that prohibit Muslims from wearing their burqas and whatnot in public. Muslims have gotten so bad in Sweden and in Norway that their rape rates have jumped over 100% just from the Muslims. But yet, you know, when they start talking about closing borders over there, you know, the people over here, the liberals, you know, they just don't even want to talk about it. Well, that's them. That's not us. We need to be just like them, except when we're not just like them. What about abortion? You know, back in the 1930s, the Germans were real big on abortion and euthanasia and whatnot. You know, if you were mentally retarded or old or really, really sick, Germans had no problem pulling the plug on you. I mean, you know, Planned Parenthood would be right at home in Nazi Germany. Well, the funny part about it is that the European Court of Human Rights has just issued a major ruling taking a gigantic step towards protecting the sanctity of human life, while falling short of ultimately ruling unborn children as humans. It took a dramatic step in the right direction by ruling that a human embryo is not a thing, and that a nation can legally protect an unborn human being from destruction. On August 27th, the Grand Chamber of the European Court of Human Rights issued a judgment in the case of Perillo versus Italy concerning the status of human embryos conceived in vitro and placed into cryopreservation. Basically, she had her eggs fertilized and then they were frozen. Well, the mother said that those are her embryos. They are her objects to own. And she complained of the impossibility of giving her embryos to research so that they can be destroyed at the service of science. You know, kind of like Planned Parenthood. Well, we'll just donate these fetuses so that they can do experiments on them. Well, we need a dozen heads and a few hearts and maybe a few livers, you know, so we can go experiment on them. Just like what Planned Parenthood is doing. They were doing this over there. And she's saying that this was a violation of the right of her right of ownership of her embryos. Well, on the issue of property rights, the Grand Chamber unanimously rejected this complaint on the grounds that human embryos cannot be reduced to possessions. On the issue of an infringement of the privacy The Grand Chamber ruled that Italy can legitimately prohibit the destruction of human embryos in order to comply with the rights and freedoms of others, other people being the human embryos. So in other words, like an abortion, it may be her body, but you can't destroy the embryo for the right and freedom of her body taking precedence. In fact, one of the judges, Judge Dedoff, said the right to life is absolute, and this fundamental tenet makes it unnecessary to explain why a murderer, a disabled person, or an abandoned child, or even an embryo should be kept alive. We do not need to evaluate their usefulness for society, but we remain hopeful regarding their potential. Unborn human life is no different in essence from born life. Human embryos must be treated in all circumstances with the respect due to human dignity. Scientific research applications concerning the human genome, in particularly in the field of genetics, do not prevail over respect for human dignity. I wonder how soon we can get some of that going here in the United States. At least one thing happened here in the United States. One of the laws in Arizona that's been in contention was upheld by the U.S. District Court, which allows police in Arizona to check the immigration status of anyone they stop. Not only that, the lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice and Arizona's Maricopa County and Sheriff Joe Arpaio has been dropped, saying that they have the right, indeed the duty, to find out where these illegal aliens are coming from and what they're doing. There may be hope yet, folks, as long as everybody sticks together and Cowboys up.